I never bought a cord of firewood in 40 winters on the Alaskan interior. Not once. And I stayed warm when the thermometer dropped to 50 below. That right there is what the firewood industry does not want you to think too hard about. Most folks in this country are spending hundreds of dollars every single winter just to keep warm. Natural gas alone ran the average household over $600 last heating season, according to federal energy data. Cordwood on top of that, or heating oil, and you are looking at real money. Money that leaves your pocket and goes straight into somebody else's. The old sourdoughs who came before me never paid a dime for heat. The land gave it to them. It can give it to you too if you know what to look for and how to burn it right. My name is Cyrus Hale. Most people who know me call me Klondike. I spent the better part of 40 years prospecting gold in the Alaskan interior, living off-grid in cabins not much bigger than a decent-sized living room through winters that would stop most folks cold. And I mean that in the most literal way you can imagine. Fairbanks, where I settled after the prospecting years, regularly sees temperatures that will kill a man who is not prepared. -40 is not unusual. -50 happens. When it gets that cold, heat is not a comfort. It is life itself. I learned to heat from the land the way the old sourdoughs taught it to me, and the way I had to learn it myself through hard experience. Those old timers, the men who came up in the early days, who built their cabins with a hand axe and a dream and not much else, they did not have a phone number to call for a cord delivery. They went out into the woods and they took what the land offered. They knew things about wood and fire that most people today have completely forgotten, and that the modern heating industry has no particular interest in reminding you of. I covered zone heating with a clay pot setup in an earlier talk, and before that, I showed you how to bank your coals overnight and seal the drafts that bleed your heat away. What I want to dig into today is the root of the whole thing, fuel itself. Where to get it for free, how to make it burn right, and how to set up your cabin so a fraction of the wood does twice the work. Stick with me on this. By the time we are done, you will look at a stand of trees very differently than you did before. The single most important thing I can tell you, the thing that changes everything, is this. The best firewood you will ever burn is already dead, already standing, and it is out there waiting for you right now, standing dead timber. That is the old-timer's secret, and it is hiding in plain sight on almost every piece of forested land in this country. Here is how you spot it. A standing dead tree has lost its leaves or its needles. On a spruce, you will see bare gray branches where there used to be green. On a birch, no leaves come spring and summer, and the white bark starts to loosen and slough away from the trunk. Knock on it with the back of your axe handle. A living tree sounds solid and dull. A good standing dead tree rings a little hollow or gives you a lighter, crisper knock depending on how far along it is. The bark is your first clue. When it starts peeling free on its own, that tree has been working itself dry for you. That is the one you want. Why is standing dead so valuable? Because it has been seasoning right where it stands, sometimes for a year, sometimes for 2 or 3, with air moving around it on all sides. Rain hits the surface, but the wood itself has been slowly losing its interior moisture to wind and sun and time. When you fall a green tree and split it and stack it, you are doing the work that standing dead timber already did for you while you were not watching. The old sourdoughs understood this intuitively. They were not lazy. Those men worked harder than most people today can comprehend, but they were not going to do work the land would do for them. Now up here in Alaska, we have had a spruce beetle outbreak running for the better part of a decade. The Alaska Department of Natural Resources has documented over 2 million acres of beetle-killed spruce across the state. 2 million acres of standing dead timber, much of it in the right stage of dry to cut and burn. The old-timers would have called that a gift. Beetle-killed spruce seasons fast because the beetle activity itself compromises the bark and speeds moisture loss. You do have to use it before it rots to punk, but in the 1 to 3 year range after kill, that wood is often prime fuel. If you are in a region with beetle kill or any kind of standing dead, that is your woodpile. You just have to go get it. What else do you burn for free? Deadfall. Trees that have already come down on their own, limbs that dropped in a windstorm. These are often overlooked because they are on the ground, and people assume ground contact means rot. Sometimes it does, but a recently fallen tree or a downed limb off a live tree is still good fuel if you get to it before it punks out. Check the interior with your axe. Solid and light-colored inside means good wood. Gray and punky means leave it. Bark slabs from a sawmill or from your own felling. Do not throw those away. Bark burns, especially birch bark, which the old-timers used as a fire starter going back further than anyone can remember. A curl of dry birch bark will light from a single spark and burns hot and fast. Use it to get your fire going. Fatwood. This is something most modern folks have never heard of, and it is one of the finest fire-starting materials on Earth. Fatwood is the resin-soaked heartwood you find in old pine or spruce stumps, particularly right at the root collar where the tree met the ground. When a conifer dies, the resin concentrates in the lower trunk and roots. Cut into an old stump with your axe, and if you see wood that is darker, almost orange, and smells strongly of pitch, that is fatwood. It will light even in wet conditions. Carry a few sticks of fatwood, and you will never struggle to start a fire. The old sourdoughs kept a piece in their shirt pocket when they were working the creeks in winter. I still do. Pine cones and spruce cones. Same principle. Full of resin, quick to light, good for coaxing a fire from cold. Not your primary fuel, but excellent kindling. Then there are the sources people overlook entirely. Sawmill offcuts and edgings, the slabs they trim off when they square a log, are often available for free or close to it from small mills. Call around. Many small operations are glad to have someone haul the scrap away. Clean, untreated construction lumber scraps from job sites are the same story. The key word there is untreated. I want to come back to that in a minute because it matters a great deal. Now let me talk about the species themselves because not all wood burns the same, and the old-timers knew their wood the way a cook knows their ingredients. Up here, the two kings are birch and spruce. White birch is a dense, hard wood that produces around 20 million BTUs of heat per cord, among the best you will find in the boreal north. It burns long and hot and holds coals well. Spruce is softer, produces less heat per cord at around 16 million BTUs, but it splits easier, ignites faster, and gets a fire going quickly. The old-timers' practice was to mix them. Use spruce to catch the fire and build your base, then load birch for the long sustained burn through the cold part of the night. Two different tools. Know which one to reach for and when. A word on what you should never burn. Treated lumber, anything that has been pressure treated, painted, stained, or chemically preserved, puts toxic fumes into your cabin. Never, ever burn it inside. Driftwood from saltwater coastlines is corrosive and releases chlorine compounds when it burns, which damages your stovepipe and is hard on your lungs. Leave it on the beach. The old-timers were practical men, not reckless ones. They knew what the land gave them cleanly, and they stuck to it. Now, we come to the question of moisture, because this is where a lot of people go wrong, even when they have perfectly good wood. The target for clean, efficient burning is a moisture content of 15 to 20%. Above 20%, and you are fighting the fire more than feeding it. Wet wood smolders. Smoldering wood produces creosote, that black, tar-like buildup inside your chimney pipe. Creosote buildup is what causes chimney fires. The old sourdoughs had a saying I have never forgotten. A lazy fire is what burns a cabin down. They did not mean a fire that was simply small. They meant a smoldering, smoking, low-temperature fire fed with wet or green wood. That is the dangerous fire. A clean, hot fire burning properly seasoned wood is the safe one. Standing dead timber, as I said, is often already near that 15 to 20% range when you find it, depending on how long it has been standing and your local climate. But anything you fall green needs to season. The method is simple and has not changed in 150 years. Split the wood, split it. Do not leave it in rounds because rounds dry from the outside in and rounds take forever. Split pieces expose the grain and let moisture escape from the interior. Stack it off the ground on poles or pallets so air can circulate underneath. Leave the sides open to sun and wind. Put something over the top, a metal roof, a tarp weighted down, even a piece of corrugated steel, to keep rain off. Cover the top, leave the sides open. That is the whole method. Stack it in a spot that gets afternoon sun if you can manage it. The old miners stacked against the south-facing wall of the cabin for exactly that reason. If you want to know where your wood actually stands, a simple moisture meter costs a few dollars at any hardware store and slips into your pocket. Poke it into a fresh split face on a piece you are about to burn. 15 to 20%, you are good. Above 25, stack it longer. Now let me show you how to burn it so you use far less than you think you need. This is the other half of the equation, and it is just as important as the sourcing. The old-timers burned what I call the upside-down fire. Most people today were taught to build a fire with tinder at the bottom, then kindling, then the big logs on top. That is backwards. Here is the right way. Put your largest, heaviest pieces of wood on the very bottom. Stack medium pieces on top of those, then your kindling, then your finest tinder right at the top. Light it at the top. The fire burns downward slowly. The coals drop onto the next layer and ignite it progressively. And you get a long, steady burn with almost no tending. The smoke and gases from the lower layers pass up through the burning top layer and combust rather than escaping as waste up the chimney. It burns cleaner, produces less creosote, and lasts significantly longer than a conventionally built fire. The first time you do this, it feels wrong. Do it anyway. You will not go back. Right-sizing the fire matters just as much. Do not build a fire bigger than the cold requires. A roaring inferno in a small cabin on a -10 evening is wasted fuel. Learn what your stove needs to hold your cabin at a comfortable temperature and build to that. Damper control is how you dial it in. A fully open damper gives you a fast, hot burn. As the fire establishes and you want to slow it to a cruise, ease the damper down, but never so far that the fire drops into a smolder. Keep it burning hot enough that you see flame, not just smoke. That is the line between a clean fire and a creosote-making machine. And keep your chimney swept. The old sourdoughs ran a brush through theirs regularly. It is not a hard job, and it can save your cabin. Now the last piece of the efficiency puzzle, and this one the old-timers used in the far north when they needed heat that lasted through a long, cold night without stoking every few hours. Thermal mass. Stone and brick absorb heat from a burning stove and release it slowly over many hours after the fire has died down. In the old masonry stove tradition, and there are variations of this going back centuries through the Russian and Scandinavian north, you surround the firebox with mass, and that mass becomes your heat battery. You do not need to build a full masonry stove to use this principle. Stack clean flat stones or fire brick around the base and sides of your existing stove, close but not blocking the airflow or the legs. As the stove runs hot, that stone drinks up the heat. When the fire burns low in the early morning hours, the stone is still giving back into the room. I have had a cabin stay comfortable for 6 hours after the last log went in, just from thermal mass doing its job. Banking coals, the way I showed you in the last talk, works hand in hand with this. The final lesson, and it is the one that pulls everything together, is that the old miners worked their woodpile all year long, a little every trip. When they walked the creek to check a sluice, they marked a standing dead birch. When they came back through on the way home, they dropped it. When they ran the dog sled out to check traps, they loaded the sled with deadfall on the way back. The woodpile grew slowly, steadily, without any single killing effort. Winter never caught them short because they never let a whole season go by without thinking about it. That is the discipline. An axe, a bucksaw, and a sled are the tools. You do not need more than those three to heat a cabin from land-gathered fuel. The axe falls the tree and splits the rounds. The bucksaw cuts it to length. The sled brings it home. That is the entire system. So why did this ever stop being common knowledge? Well, when energy got cheap and deliveries got convenient, people stopped needing to think about it. Truck shows up, dumps a cord in your driveway, you hand over a check. Simple enough. But simple and cheap are two different things. And when that average household is running $600 just on natural gas through a single winter before you add any wood heat on top, simple is starting to look expensive. The land does not send you a bill. It never did. The old sourdoughs understood something that got lost somewhere along the way. You are not helpless in the face of winter if you know how to read the woods. The firewood industry is selling you labor, delivery, and convenience. The labor and the delivery and the convenience are not what keeps you warm. The wood does, and the wood is out there. The land heats you for free if you know what to take. That is what 40 winters taught me, and that is what I want to leave with you today. Get out and find your standing dead. Learn your birch from your spruce, split it, stack it right, and burn it hot and clean. Stack some stone around that stove, build your woodpile a little at a time all year long. You will go into next winter with heat that cost you nothing but your own good effort, and that is a fine feeling on a cold night, the finest there is. If this is useful to you, hit that subscribe button and stay close, because there is a lot more where this came from. Every week I share something from the old ways that still works today, maybe better than it ever did. And if you want the whole system, fuel, heat, shelter, water, all of it written out the way I would tell it to a man building his first off-grid cabin. The link to my free off-grid cabin guide is right there in the description below. Grab it. It is yours. No strings. Just old knowledge that belongs to anyone willing to use it. Stay warm out there and take care of your woodpile.